At the age of 12, my father went to collect rent from a tenant, and that tenant took his life. So at the age of
My
12,
goodness.
I was like, "Woo, I don't want anything to do with real estate." But my
Mm.
grandfather talked me into things later on in life and changed my mindset.
Hello, hello. My name is Dr. Rachel Gainsbrugh, and I am obsessed with all things short term rentals, revenue streams, and helping you navigate your career, real estate, and your busiest and most wonderful seasons of life. So grab your coffee, get comfortable as you get ready to learn and grow with me. This is the Luxury Rental Doctor Podcast. Kamren, goodness gracious, Dr. Kamren Gallon, thank you so much for joining us today. I would love to kick it off, just diving into your journey, where you are now. Now, I know you've been investing in real estate since
Right.
2018. You have completed over 100 transactions,
Yeah.
and you still manage to work full time as a pharmacist. I
Right.
want to know, and I think our audience will want to know, what initially sparked your interest in real estate, and how do you get started?
So for me, I always knew about real estate. I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So my grandfather, he was a businessman, and ever since I came out the womb, I knew about real estate. I didn't know about it to the capacity I know of it now and all the revenue streams. But what I did know is people could buy houses and you could have a tenant and they pay you. So my grandfather, he was the pioneer of it, and then his sons, my uncle and my father, they were like the landlords who managed everything, managed the properties, collected the money. Fortunately, at the age of 12, my father went to collect rent from a tenant, and that tenant took his life. So at the
Oh
age of
my
12,
goodness.
I was like, "Woo, I don't want anything to do with real estate." But my
Mm.
grandfather talked me into things later on in life and changed my mindset. But after the age of 12, after losing my father, it was just me and him. My grandparents, they always wanted me to get out of the city. I grew up in Philadelphia, a really rough area. And
Mm.
one of the things they were like, "Hey, why don't you go into medicine?"
Mhm.
I didn't know anything about the medical field. All I knew is people became doctors, but I knew it took forever to become a
Yeah.
doctor. So I didn't have a lot of money, and I was very fortunate that growing up in Philadelphia, I wasn't the smartest kid out of my high school, but I was the smartest kid in my neighborhood
Mm.
that was able. So, with that being said, the colleges that I applied to, they wanted to give some inner city kids opportunities, so I was able to go to school on a full ride.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that kind of put me ahead of the game. Then I was like, okay, we may have something going here. So then after doing my undergraduate degree, then I found out about pharmacy
Mhm.
versus going to the doctor route. I always thought about being a cardiologist, but once you start getting into the programs and you start learning more, you're like, whoa, that's an 8 or 12 year or 16-year program. Then I found out about pharmacy, and it was just a shorter pathway. And at the time when I found out the salary, anything sounds good to a kid coming from the inner city. So
Yeah.
six figures, you
Hey.
don't really know. Six figures, low six figures, or high six, but you just don't know. So six figures sounds very attractive to a lot of people. So that's how I got into medicine. And then in 2018, I had twin daughters, and at that time, I going into fatherhood, I started thinking more about my father
Mm.
and the woman I was with at the time. I didn't marry anyone that was financially where I was in life, I'll say.
Mm.
So I knew I would have to pick up a lot of the slack financially. So I was just thinking to myself, what other ways can I make money outside of the pharmacy?
Mm.
Having two daughters at the same time for your first
Goodness.
rodeo, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how expensive children are as well. So being on different formulas, their fraternal twins are the different sizes, different clothes. It was adding up, and I didn't want to always be there and come home and be burnt out. So I
Yeah.
just before they were born, maybe a month or two before they were born in May, I purchased my first property. I was listening to Bigger Pockets
Yeah.
podcast,
We all started on Bigger Pockets, I think.
and I read the Purple Bible, the Rich Dad Poor Dad
Yep.
by Rob Kiyosaki.
Mhm.
And I was 30 years old, and I never had a conversation with anyone about assets or liabilities.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything about it. So I went to my grandfather, and he never mentioned the word asset or liabilities. He said, "Hey, you're about to be a father. You need to start making," he called it old money. You know, the
Mm.
pharmacy's bringing
Okay.
you in new money, but you need to start making old money. I never
Old
heard it like that, but
money.
that was his
Okay.
way of telling me stop trading your time so much for money.
Ooh,
Or,
I like old
you know,
money. Yes.
yeah. So that I never heard that, but that was
Mhm.
like I said, we didn't use assets or liabilities in our
Right.
household or passive or active
Mm-mm.
income.
Right.
So I think his way of saying, hey, invest, that's a form of passive income. And then things just started clicking.
Yeah.
So since 2018, a lot of ups and downs, of course. You don't know. And my grandfather say, hey, what we're doing up here in Philadelphia, you're going to want to do something different where you're living. And for him to say that to me, I was like, I would think you would want me to be or follow in your footsteps. He said, it's a lot of ways to make money in real estate. You got to
Yeah.
figure out what works best for you.
Oh, I think there's so much wisdom there because you're absolutely right. I remember when we first got started, everyone was talking about wholesaling per se,
Mhm.
or everyone was talking about storage facility investing
Right.
or syndications. And so,
Mhm.
really figuring out what's in alignment with you and your current lifestyle, I think, is the absolute key, especially being a full time worker, right, in the pharmacy
Absolutely.
space. Yeah. So, let's talk about that for a moment. What does it look like when you're balancing a full time career in pharmacy and running this seven-figure real estate business that you're
Right.
running? Could you share what are some of your routines? What are some of the strategies that's helping you to manage both of those roles effectively? I know our busy
Right.
professionals, they want to know, they want the tea.
Absolutely. So I think one of the benefits of being a pharmacist, and if you've been in pharmacy or in healthcare and you reach a position of management, and that could just be you just being a pharmacy manager. Every pharmacist is essentially a manager
Yep.
when they're there by themselves because you have to manage the technicians
Mhm.
and you have a lot of people working around you. And if you work in retail, you got to stay focused and you have a lot of distractions. So I realized that was actually my advantage when it came to real estate. So of course, when I first started, I just did the traditional thing, putting 20% down on houses.
Yep.
And then of course you're going to run out of money and you can run
Right.
out of money quick. And I realized I was like, whoa, I'm putting 20% down. I'm saving all this money and I'm only making like maybe $300 per door. It wasn't like it just the math. Every time I wrote my goals down, I said, I'm gonna have to own like maybe 50, 60 houses just to, escape. And
Mm.
then I started thinking about the amount of debt and I said, it has to be another way. So I started buying, then I ran out of money. Like after my third or fourth house, I just didn't know what to do. Then I found out about the burn method where you buy the house, you rehab it, you do that whole method. So that's when I started scaling up. And that's when I got good at renovations. And then once COVID happened, of course, everyone knows how the market just went bananas because of the interest rates. So since I was already buying and rehabbing these houses and keeping them for myself, I was getting familiar and practicing construction. So
Mhm.
once the interest rates lowered and everyone was saying, "Hey, this is the perfect time to do it." It was all over the headlines and everything is selling. I said, "Let me just try it."
Mhm.
And the first house, I think I made 40,000. And I think after that point, sometimes you just need the proof of concept just to hit that to your bank account. And I said that 40,000, it felt a lot better than chasing someone
300
around
a
for
month.
two, 300. It just wasn't appetizing, especially if you get one tenant call, it could wipe your whole cash flow out for the whole year
Yep.
and you're spending time away from your family. And if your partner at the time, and my partner at the time, she wasn't really seeing the benefit of it.
Yeah.
And once someone doesn't really see the benefit within the household, when you're trying to chase something and it's requiring a lot of time or it's losing you money,
Mm.
even though you keep saying, hey, in 30 years or 20 years, you're really going to, people, unfortunately, they want to live today. So that's when I found out about flipping houses. And once I got that first flip, that's when I really started to turn up and then take it to the next level, even with the rentals, because then I started paying the rentals off. Then I started buying rentals out of state, all cash, and then the cash flow. Now it seems a lot more appetizing to be an investor and to buy the rental versus the what I was doing when I first started. So
Love.
the systems are the most important thing
Mm.
that I have going for myself and mentorship. My mentor
Mm.
who's also my private lender, who I introduced to people in my real estate course, he does 50 flips a year. And he lends to three gentlemen in the area, me and two other people, and he also mentors us. He does 50 flips a year and he just retired last year. So he always told me, do what you can now, and as long as you don't let your work get in the way of making money, you'll be fine. I
Mm.
said, what do you mean by work getting in the way of making money? He said, don't ever let the pharmacy get in the way of making the real estate money. And I didn't really understand that until the last year or two,
Mm.
because I was working jobs, and I'll be very transparent with you. I had to change jobs twice within the last year. I was working for a company. They tried to change my schedule to
Mhm.
almost like a Monday through Friday schedule. And I said, this
It's
isn't going
getting
to
in the
work.
way of you making money.
It was getting in the way of me making money. I can't go see the houses. I can't
Yeah.
do my due diligence. It was just getting in the way of me making money. And I said, I can't do that. So they said, hey, they put me on a leave, and I got a letter, and I was terminated because they couldn't work with my schedule.
Yeah.
So then I went virtual or remote for Rite Aid. And then we all know they filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah. I saw that.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
when I was working remotely, I even had pictures of me on my social, like while I'm talking on the FaceTime, and my
Mhm.
contractors. So that was fine.
Yeah.
But the remote job, of course, due to the company, they went down.
Yeah.
But so now I work for a company that at my interview, I said, hey, this is my availability. Can you take it or not? Because more importantly than the money, I have to be there for my daughters.
Yeah.
I had to work out a schedule where I could be in their lives. And unfortunately, a Monday through Friday schedule, it just wasn't the best for me. Like now I design my schedule, whereas I could do my real estate. No one even knows I'm a pharmacist in real estate. And when I work at the pharmacy, no one knows I do real estate. And that's how I like it. So they know me as Cam the pharmacist. And on this side, they know me as Cam the investor. And I like to keep it like that. So people think I'm full time. And when I'm at the pharmacy, I even tell my scheduler, I don't do it, but I'll be like, hey, if you ever need me for overtime, just give me a call. So I just want them to know, it's mainly because at the end of the day, at heart, I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I didn't get into real estate to quit my pharmacy job.
Right.
Like I got into real estate to make sure I didn't have any more student loans.
Mhm.
So even though I make more money in real estate, pharmacy doesn't bother me because it's not getting in the way of me making money in real estate. I have the systems in place. And honestly, I'm not a handyman. I don't know how to fix any of this stuff. So that's one of the things my mentor made me realize is, what are you going to do if a faucet or a leaking toilet or whatever? You have to build systems where you can rely on people.
Yep.
So he gave me a book to read called The 4 Hour Work Week.
Yeah.
And that book taught me about the systems and everything.
Yep.
And he also taught me that just because you don't equivalate or don't, just because you're making more money here doesn't mean you have to spend more money doing this. And that kind of changed my mindset as well. I was like, wow, just because I can actually make more money here and I don't really have to spend as much time as I do at the pharmacy. I just try to just keep them separate. Yeah, like I said, I didn't get into it just to quit pharmacy.
Yep.
Like I said, I love my job, and actually, I feel like I'm a better pharmacist because I don't have to go there with all the pressure of the metrics that people try to put on you. I could be a better pharmacist to patients. I don't feel rushed. I don't
Yep.
feel like I'm on anybody's clock,
Oh, I
and
love that.
and actually, I'm just there just to support. Like I said, and I even felt that because, and it's a great thing, and it's a great thing when you don't even know when payday comes anymore.
Yep.
That makes you feel so good.
Yeah.
It makes you feel so good. And the technicians, the other pharmacists, they don't even know what I do. They're like, hey, Cam, do you want to eat out or order out today? I'm like, nah, I'm okay. I packed my lunch. So I
Yeah.
still live. I'm very frugal. I don't spend a lot. You wouldn't even know what I do. And that's how I like to live.
I love that. I know you mentioned your daughters a couple of times as
Mhm.
being a part of the journey. How important is it to you that they learn about real estate, financial independence at such a young age? I've seen them on social, they're super adorable. And I noticed you do involve them in a lot of ways in your real estate business. What are some things that you're wanting to instill in them through this
Yeah.
experience?
So I think one of the biggest things, just like I was introduced to real estate as a child, I always think a part of legacy, if we want to say that word is thrown around these days, generational wealth. My grandparents or my grandfather, yeah, he was successful in real estate, but the legacy that he left on to me is what I'm trying to pass on to them. So I always saw my grandfather as an entrepreneur. I think it's important that for me to raise my daughters, since it's two of them, they're twins, they're totally different. Just like real estate and pharmacy, totally different. So one of the twins, she loves the real estate stuff. She loves it. The other one, she wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up
Oh.
because she sees me in the white coat. So I think that's important for them to see. But not only that, but they're females, and it's not, and this is a male dominated industry. So the only way I have set up systems and overcame my fear is because I want to inspire them. So I want my daughters to know, hey, you could take on these properties and you could be behind the scenes just like me and no one will ever know.
Yeah.
So I think the way I built my business is almost like you wouldn't know if a female, a male, because you very rarely see me.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for them to see as well. And just showing them that, hey, it's okay to work hard. You could be whatever you want to be. Like I said, I asked them the other day, we just came back from Disney, and it was nice to be able to take them on a cruise, a long cruise like that, and not have to worry about financially how I'm gonna pay for it
Yeah.
or looking forward to any bills. That was a great thing.
Yeah.
And I asked them on a cruise, they said, hey, what does your dad do? And they both gave two different responses. And it just made, and that right there, it really put a smile on my face. And I said, okay. She said, my daddy builds houses.
Mm-hmm.
She I don't build houses, but
Mm-hmm.
she thinks I'm a builder.
Yeah.
But and then she said, "No, Daddy's a doctor." And they just started arguing. The lady said, "What do you do?" I said, "I do both." And it was a very nice moment. We just all chuckled and laughed about it.
That's amazing. A lot is caught, right? And not necessarily
Yeah.
taught. So that's awesome. Okay, so Dr. Cameron, now it's time for our rapid fire Q&A. We'll love for you to tackle these 3 lightning fast questions. Okay, so
hmm
first, let's dive in. Can you share a moment when you felt completely burnt out and how you overcame it?
So when the market changed,
Mm,
when the interest rates went from low to high, I almost lost it because
mm,
all of a sudden people had backed out of, I had 3 offers or 3 deals under contract and people had backed out. It was just very stressful for me. And one of the things that I had to do was I talked to my mentor. I reached out to him and he said, hey, don't worry. We're going through the same exact thing.
yeah.
And he just gave me some mental health tips.
Mm,
And he was like, and it's funny because he's not in the medical field, but he's giving me mental health or advice on that.
yeah.
And seeking therapy as an investor or as an entrepreneur, nothing is wrong with that.
Yeah.
And I think just me seeking therapy for myself,
As a
just to
medical
help out,
professional too.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and just having someone to talk to,
Yeah.
that has changed me for the better
Ooh,
because
I love
so
that.
I think now, like I said, I go to therapy every 2 weeks, just
Lovely.
and it is it's very soothing and good for the mind.
I love it. Great tip. Question number 2. What's a book or resource that completely changed your perspective on life or work?
Great question. So I think I'll give you 2 books. One is by Grant Cardone, The Power of 10X.
Mm,
And the reason I say that is because as a pharmacist, we on average make about 120,000. That's the national average for a pharmacist.
yep.
And once I read that book, it made me believe that I could 10x that.
Mm,
And maybe a year and a half later, that's when I made my first million a year.
yeah.
So that book itself, just the mindset.
Yes.
And the other one I would say is just Millionaire Next Door.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of
A
people
good
who are
one.
wealthy, it's not shown through vehicles, jewelry, clothing, or even houses, which we both are ironically invest in. It's just shown by sometimes what you can do for others.
Yeah.
And you would never be able to judge a book by a cover. And I just love that book. Just remain humble, live below your means. There, you don't have to keep up with any Joneses. You run your own race.
Yes. Love that. What's the craziest real estate story that you've heard or experienced?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I will tell you, this is probably the craziest thing that's happened to me. I had a deal I was set to make. It was going to be the biggest deal I had
Mm,
during that. And I was set to make maybe about $80,000 on this flip. I
mm,
was just livid. I was just like, this is the deal of a lifetime. And we did it in a city called Chesapeake, Virginia.
mhm.
And the contractors I had at the time, we finished the work. They did a phenomenal job. And once we went to sell the house, I'm talking about everything was signed. I'm just contacting the title company the next day. I say, hey, where's the wire? Where's the wire for the money? And the agent who was selling the house on the buyer side, she went and did some investigation and realized we didn't pull any permits.
What?
So I don't know. She must have reported it to the lender because they wanted some permits and everything pulled. All I know is that $80,000 profit went down to maybe 20. We had to file with the city. We had to open up the walls. It was just a nightmare.
Oh my
So
goodness.
of course, I lost that buyer. We had to put it on the market. It was just a nightmare. And at that time, unfortunately, you in this business, you learn more by experience than what anybody could teach you, in my opinion. I didn't even know that the level of work we were doing, I didn't know permits weren't being pulled.
Oh my.
Unfortunately, I didn't know that. So now this is maybe my fourth or fifth house flip.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentor was like, hey, you really don't really start getting in your groove until you hit maybe 10, 20. And I was like, really, that many? And this is number 4 or 5. And I didn't know we had to pull permits on all of this stuff. Because if you watch HGTV, they skip over the permitting phase. It's just like, so
No,
I'm
in the
thinking,
permitting
yeah,
offices, that's not,
right.
that doesn't make for
I'm
good TV. Goodness gracious.
exactly. I was thinking we could just move walls, add
Oh
bathrooms, and
my
all this
gosh.
stuff. So we're making a house go from a 2 bedroom, 1 bath to a 3-2,
Yeah.
and the city plans still show a 2-1. It's just like, how do we have a 3-2 all of a sudden?
Yeah.
So we had to engineers, architects, all of
Like,
that
what
stuff
was
had
that
to get.
call like when you realized that, oh my gosh, this deal is not going to happen? You probably were feeling like,
Oh, this was before I got the therapist too. So I was ready to. I
your
almost
nervous
lost it.
system. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you really almost lose it because you don't
Hmm.
know what to do.
Yeah,
And sometimes the way investors move and probably how you move is like, hey, once you get it under contract, you're already counting on that money for the next deal. So I
yeah.
already had other deals lined up that I had to back out, lose the EMDs. So I lost a lot of money.
Wow.
So I'll say
Goodness.
we may have netted 20,000 at the closing table, but I probably lost on all the other deals. That deal alone cost me so much money. But going forward, now we pull permits for everything, everything.
I hear you. I was like, I'm sure you're not trying to learn that lesson a second time. So that's
No,
awesome. We're
yeah,
going to wrap. But before we wrap, Cameron, can you please tell our listeners how they can best connect with you online?
sure. You can follow me on Instagram at doctor, spell doctor out, period, flipper. Or you could go to my website, drflipper.net. And that's the best way to connect with me. But on Instagram, you'll see me post houses and inspirational stuff daily. And I would love to connect with you.
Oh my goodness. What an incredible conversation, Cameron. Thank you so much for sharing your journey of balancing pharmacy and building a 7-figure real estate business. Truly inspiring. And it really reminds us that our path doesn't really define our entire future, but it really is our
Absolutely.
willingness to take action. That's what actually defines it. So thanks again for tuning in to the Luxury Rental Doctor podcast. Stay inspired, take bold action, and remember, you have the power to design a life that excites you. So see you next time.
Bye bye.